And I couldn't not put Kawhi on any list because after a while, I would have been like, all right, Hawk, where's Kawhi? Anyway, so Keith Lee basically asked, which team's media day are you most interested in? I had a couple responses, and after I was looking at it, I was like, most of my responses is because, well, you'll see. I said I have a bunch. Sixers new head coach, 76ers, obviously I'm a Sixers fan, but new coach, Harden mess. The Bucks at the time was just new coach. Now it's new coach and Damian Lillard. The Rockets was new coach, new players, and potentially some play-in expectations. I just wanted to see if they were going to potentially talk about expectations for this season in their media day. Pistons, new coach, young talent. Maybe some play-in expectations, but I don't think so for the Pistons. I don't think they're going to put those expectations on themselves. The Suns, once again, new coach, championship expectations. And the Pelicans simply is Zion playing. And going into this, I was like, okay, I'm looking at this. And then 2 days yesterday, I'm realizing there's a lot of new coaches in the NBA this season. There's a lot of coaches that are either first-time coaches or first-time coaches on some teams with some pretty high expectations, or even just a lot of teams got different coaches. A lot of coaches were fired, and a lot of guys got new opportunities to try to coach new teams. So let's talk about some of the teams I'm really excited to talk about that got new coaches. We'll start out with Monty Williams signing to the Detroit Pistons. At the time, it was I don't remember who passed him. I think it was when they re-signed Popovich. Popovich's extension passed him. But at the time when the Pistons signed Monty Williams, he signed the highest contract in NBA season, like the highest coaching contract in NBA history. It was crazy. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, Monty Williams is a big name. When it was announced that he was leaving the Suns, a lot of people were wondering, who's going to pick him up? Like, that's potentially a championship aspirations coach. I'll say that. We haven't seen him win one at the head coaching position, but championship aspirations coach. So similar, but I like him going to the Pistons because it's very similar to a situation with the Suns. He's dealing with a young team that has talent, that has been bad for a bunch of years, and has been bad with a couple of different coaches. Not a bunch, but a couple of different coaches. And that's very similar to the situation he stepped in when he first got to the Suns. He gets to the Suns during that 19-20 season. They finish out undefeated in the bubble. Then that very next year, they're in the NBA Finals, and then they've continued to have deep playoff runs, in the years since he's been there. And now he's with the Pistons. And he has a really good young core to coach between Cade, Ausar Thompson, who they just drafted, Jaden Ivey, James Wiseman. Project. I'm very curious to see how Monty uses James Wiseman, considering how him and DeAndre Ayton just fell out. That thought just hit my mind. But Monty might have. I'm curious to see how he just coaches another highly scouted big man, another top draft pick big man who has struggled to live up to expectations so far. That thought just crossed my mind, but the Monty and James Wiseman on paper feels eerily similar to Monty and DeAndre Ayton. Now the expectations are completely different, so maybe the outcome won't be the same, but the setup of the situation just feels eerily similar. Then you also have some really solid vets like Joe Harris, Bogdanovich signed there this offseason as well. I like what they're building. I don't necessarily think they have play-in expectations. I think they might be in the running for it, but I don't think that's their expectations. They're just a really young team still. Cade went down and missed half of the season last year. And then once Cade went down, it really wasn't that good of a team to watch. They really missed his playmaking and leadership. But with him there under a good coach, I'm liking what's potential. I like the future for the Detroit Pistons. Next coach I want to talk about is Ime Udoka got signed with the Houston Rockets. Now, this is the team I think that has some expectations. At the very least, play-in expectations. You sign Ime to a bag, and then you give Dillon Brooks a bag, you give Fred a bag. Jalen Green's still there. You draft Amen Thompson. Şengün's looking promising. He continued to develop in his game. I want to see this team make a push for the play-in. This is a team that I think a lot of us have said and would agree desperately. And I mean, desperately needed some culture, like a winning culture. This team needed a winning culture. And they didn't, not necessarily even a winning culture. Let me rephrase. They didn't necessarily need a winning culture because I don't think you can just get that overnight. They just needed a culture, an NBA culture. There was clips going crazy of players mocking Coach Silas when he was taking them out of games, saying stuff. You literally would see clips of players mocking him. I think Silas just had lost that locker room. And I think Ime is a guy who was respected in NBA, like, players have seen the Celtics go far being coached under Ime Udoka. They had that finals run 2 years ago. And I like this fit. I like his coaching style. I think he'll bring some leadership to this young team that desperately needs. Adrian Griffin is the new head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. They have a lot going on in Milwaukee right now. Giannis applied that pressure. They get Dame, they fire Bud, and they hire Adrian Griffin. Now, going into this, when I heard the announcement, I was surprised. Adrian Griffin is a rookie head coach. His first time being a head coach in the NBA. That does not mean he's a rookie or new to the NBA, to coaching in the NBA. He has 15 years of experience as an assistant coach. He has spent the last 4 years with Nick Nurse with the Raptors, so he was a part of that championship run with the Raptors. From 2010 to 2015, he was with Thibodeau and the Bulls, so he was a part of that D Rose run. Joakim Noah, he's seen playoff success. He's seen good coaches coach, but in my mind, he might have the most pressure. And for a brand new head coach to now have to coach Giannis and Dame and put a scheme together, and I mean, honestly, you can run 50 pick and rolls a game and they're gonna figure it out. He has to put a scheme together that makes this team work. Now, I don't think the Bucks are gonna go so far as to fire him. If it goes horribly wrong, I could see them fire him. Like, to me, he has the most pressure. They can not win a championship and he can still keep his job. But if for some crazy reason they don't win the championship and look like a dumpster fire and it just goes completely left, Adrian Griffin could be out of all these new coaches that are here, he could be the one that's out of there the quickest. He really could be the one that's out of there the quickest. Shout out to Adrian Griffin for getting his job. It's a whole lot of pressure here, but I think he can pull, I'll rephrase. I'm not even gonna say I think he can pull it off, because truthfully, I'm not sure what he's going to do. I know he's coached under some good coaches. He's been a part of some good teams that have had some playoff success and made some deep playoff runs. But I'm curious to see what his scheme is going to look like when he's at the helm in a very high pressure situation. This is just a situation I'm excited to see. I got Nick Nurse on here is another guy I'm excited to see. He's a coach for my Philadelphia 76ers. He's got a lot of just to figure out in terms of what this roster is going to look like. Hopefully they get it figured out sooner rather than later so he can know what he's working with in terms of the personnel he has on the court. I think you coach a lot differently whether you do or don't have James Harden as your point guard. Like, that just looks a lot different in terms of his playmaking ability, his scoring ability. It looks a lot different of what you plan on and try to do if you do or do not have James Harden. One of the things I'm excited as a Sixers fan about Nick Nurse is any Sixers fan will tell you that the one thing that we wanted Doc to do so much was to make adjustments on the fly. Doc was, for better or worse, I think it just depends on what you like in a coach. It depends on your personnel and your team scheme. He will just let you run. Like, he's going to let the players figure it out. He's like, this is what we run. We have our schemes. We've practiced. This is what we've drilled. And I'm going to let y'all figure it out. Nurse is a guy who's not afraid to make adjustments, to try different things, to do new things. He won that championship with the Toronto Raptors in 2000. Geez, was that 2019 already? That feels so long ago. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do. And we'll see if James is or is not going to be there. But I'm excited for a new coach in Philly. And I think Nick Nurse is a really good coach. Mainly because of his ability and his proven ability to be willing to try different things. And they don't all work. I'm not saying everything he tries is a 100% bat out the park home run. Just the fact that he's willing to try it is a step above what we've had in the last couple of. Two more coaches I'm excited to see is Frank Vogel for the Phoenix Suns. We talked about this a little bit yesterday when we were talking about how the new trade has impacted the Suns and about what their lack of extremely good defensive personnel, how that could impact them. But on the flip side, how Frank Vogel is a really, really good defensive head coach. We saw what he can do with that Lakers team in 2020 and the other years when he was there. They were good defensively, completely different and better personnel. I understand that. But the mindset and the schemes of being a defensive-minded coach will help this team. The offense is going to work itself out. You have some elite offensive guys who we've seen Kevin Durant play with other stars. We know these guys can play with other stars on the offensive side of the ball. It's just about getting a stop. And Frank Vogel is the coach for that. He can and will implement good defensive schemes. And then the last coach I wanted to talk about is the new coach since Nick Nurse left the Raptors and went to my Sixers. The Raptors picked up Darko Rajakovic. Darko Rajakovic is the new head coach for the Toronto Raptors. Brand new head coach, rookie head coach. He's been an assistant for years. He spent 5 years with OKC from 2014 to 2019. He spent a year in Phoenix from 2019-20 season. And then he spent the last 3 seasons with Memphis, 2020 to 2023. So he's been around the league. He's to varying levels of success in terms of playoff runs between OKC, Phoenix, and Memphis. He's seen different levels of success. He's seen different schemes, different, honestly, a lot of different player personnel in terms of the talent that was on those teams while he was there, that I'm thinking about it. But the reason I'm so interested here is that the Raptors, and we've talked about this when we were talking about the power forward list. The Raptors are a team to me that I want to know what direction they're going in. All season last year, OG was in trade rumors. Fred was in trade rumors. There was even talks, not necessarily Pascal was in trade rumors, but it was like, okay, Pascal's really good. If y'all not figuring this out, like, it's a good piece to move somewhere else. If a rebuild is where you want to go, like, let's go ahead and do it. Because I don't think going into this season, I don't think the Raptors thought they would end up losing to Chicago Bulls in the play-in and missing the playoffs completely. I don't think that was not on their vision board in the beginning of training camp last season. So they have to figure out some new stuff. Like, I think Nick Nurse lost that locker room. He had that famous quote when he left there and when he left the Raptors, and he's basically like, to the next coach, good luck with those guys in that locker room. He lost the locker room. Fred is no longer there. OG was in trade rumors all season. I don't know if he feels some type of way about that, but this is a team that desperately needs some direction, desperately needs a new voice in that locker room. So it might be good that Darko is a brand new head coach. Like I said, it's a guy who's been around the NBA, but it might be good that he's a brand new head coach and has the ability to implement his stuff. Truthfully, if comparing to just guys who are brand new head coaches, I think Darko's situation is way different than Adrian Griffith's situation, because while, yes, I'm sure there's pressure to at least make the playoffs, the pressure ain't the same as the Bucks pressure. Because truthfully, if it's look like it's going left, the Raptors could still decide to trade OG midway through the season and for picks or whatever. I'm sure there's teams out there that would be interested in his talents. There's just not as much pressure for the Toronto Raptors. And I think that's a good team. That's a good opportunity for a brand new head coach, a team that still understandably know that on my mind has really good pieces and really good players and could be a playoff team. It would be disappointing if they don't make the playoffs. I'm gonna keep it a bean. I would be disappointed in them if they don't make the playoffs. But considering what we saw last year, I also necessarily wouldn't be shocked if they didn't make the playoffs. The playoffs expectations, but not the end of the world if they don't make it, in my mind. What's good, Kev? How you doing, bro? So yeah, those are just some coaches that I think there were a lot of new coaches this year. A lot of guys who got new coaching opportunities, got moved around, a couple of new coaches that have never been head coaches. So I'll be keeping a close eye on these 5, 6 guys to see how they do this season. Maybe we'll check in maybe a couple months into the season to see how they're doing, halfway point, see how they're doing. Y'all got to remind me. And we'll keep this. I'll make sure I keep this list to just check in and see how they're doing as the season goes on. I like when coaches get new opportunities because I think the X's and O's side of the game is really interesting to me. It's the part of the game that makes it. That's a part of the NBA that makes it more than just like entertaining to watch but also thought provoking. I might be thinking too deep into it, but that's the part of the basketball I like. That's the part of the NBA I like, the X's and O's, the coaching schemes, the coaching battle, if you will. Like, I like that stuff when you can visibly see coaches make adjustments and changing from game to game depending on who their matchup is. And we got 6 coaches that are having new opportunities to do just that. So we'll make sure we keep tapped in on them throughout the season.